to my channel. Welcome back to Oscar Overlander. Yeah guys, I am really blown out of my socks, like by the success of the last video. I really want to thank all of you for viewing the video, clicking on it, and most importantly liking it, because it gets recommended by YouTube to a ton of people, and then it boosted my channel like significantly. So I really thank you for that. So in the last week I was not at home. I was abroad, therefore no chance to do something on my rig or on the truck. So I will use this possibility here to touch on a very important topic, and that is importing. If you may remember, I have done a video how you can find a base truck for a project like this. I will link it up here in the corner. You can watch it, how you will be able to find a truck for yourself, for your project. Yeah, that's up here. And now I want to touch on the topic, how to ship and how to import a truck, yeah, or a base truck, or a vehicle in general. So, and that you not just believe a stranger on the internet, we're going to see the man. The man is Bruce, and he was my shipping agent, and he has a ton of knowledge, and we will ask him all the questions that are necessary to bring in a truck from Europe. Let's go there. So hey Bruce.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah.
Taking some time to answer some questions.
Yeah.
About the shipping. You are a shipping agent, or you have an agency. Maybe you want to introduce yourself a little bit to the community.
Sure. Yeah, my name's Bruce. I've run Leverage Logistics for the last 8 years.
Uh-huh.
And prior to that, I was in transportation, mostly ground, running trucking companies and managing freight companies. I just got tired of doing it and listening to the boss all the time and the owners, right? So
yeah.
So then I got into this, and so I've been doing it mostly ocean, air, and then ground in North America.
I see.
That's what I'm doing, yeah.
Cool. Very good. Yeah, so how Bruce and I came together is we're working together a pretty long time already, because my company is shipping freights in from different countries, and Bruce is taking care of that. He's organizing all the containers coming in and out. We're talking here about truck transportation. I purchased my truck on an auction in Germany, but I had no idea how to bring it over to North America. Of course, I was checking that before I purchased, right? And for me, it was clear that I shipped the truck from Hamburg in Germany, or Bremerhaven, in Germany, over on the east coast to Halifax, basically Nova Scotia, Canada, the east coast from Canada. So I was doing my due diligence about that, and I found out that is kind of almost impossible. And why is that impossible? Because I had some quotes, and back in the days I shipped it early at the pandemic. There was €4,500, roll on, roll off it called. Bigger equipment, bigger trucks get rolled onto a ferry and then rolled off at the destination. So €4,500, which equals about 6,000 Canadian, I would say.
At least.
Yeah, 6,000 Canadian. And then I would have my truck in Canada, but on the East Coast. And when I talked to the ICBC, to the insurer, they said I cannot drive it across the country because it cannot be insured, for the simple reason that whatever vehicle arrives in Canada need to be inspected first before it can be insured. But the regulations say also it can only be inspected in that country of destination. That means I live in British Columbia on the west coast, so I have to bring it over to inspect it, and then I can insure it. So therefore, it is impossible to drive it across the country without inspection, without insurance. So that's pretty clear. I was looking into an alternative, maybe put it on the back of another truck and bring it over here. So I get some quotes for that, and that's where I really get kind of goosebumps, because at the time of the beginning pandemic, I had quotes from 13,000 to 16,000, I believe.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Very expensive.
It was very expensive. So now with the increasing diesel cost, I could imagine this is now beyond 20, but I cannot, I don't want to speculate on that. So this is exactly when I called up Bruce and said, Bruce, what are I going to do here? And he did his research. And what did you find out then?
Yeah, well, I discovered that we could get a direct sailing to the West Coast by going through the Panama Canal, right? So once I discovered that, I thought, okay, well, that's what we want to do. Roll on, roll off makes sense. So then it was just, how do we get inside Germany and figure out what we need to do to get it prepared for export?
Right.
And, I really didn't know. I call this project freight, right? Because you can't just phone up a regular shipping company and ask them to do, because they're not interested, right? Unless it's going inside a container. So I found a gentleman in the UK who kind of did what I did, but he's over in Europe, right? So I got him interested in this project, right? Let's get this fire truck going, and so he discovered the documentation that was needed, and we started to assemble it. And it was a bit of a process, right? Because stuff we had to figure out, you had to find out from the owner different things, and he had to supply them. We needed you to be properly identified with a passport picture and all these different things.
Yeah.
So we assembled all the documents, and then we booked the freight, and it was, and then we got someone to drive it right down to the port and go through all the procedures. And then I got the notification, it's inside the port. So that was great news.
Yeah.
And when we brought it to the West Coast through the Panama Canal, we had talked about bringing it to Vancouver, which made the most sense. But the roll-on, roll-off facility they had in Vancouver, we didn't feel was adequate. So we went with Seattle, and we got it rolled off in Seattle, went through, and it was in bond, so that it didn't go through U.S. Customs. It was in bond, and then we drove it up. We had someone, a company, drive it up with a dealer plate up to the Canadian border, where it was cleared into Canada.
Yeah.
And then they drove it right to your house, didn't they?
That's right. They
drove
did.
it
Yes.
right to your curb and jumped out and gave you the keys. Said,
Yeah.
have a nice day.
Yeah, that's when I made my first video, my very first video, where the truck has arrived. You can actually see when the truck rolled in onto the property. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I would just say that, for anyone that wants to do this type of thing in the future, you really need to have someone who's willing to stay on it.
Right.
Who's interested in making sure it happens.
Right.
Because most of the companies, they're shipping containers, they'll do air freight, they'll do these little packages and so on. But great big, it's called project freight, and not a lot of companies do it. And especially vehicles. It's I remember looking over the paperwork, preparing for this little talk we're going to have. There was also, additional commercial invoices where you had stuff that was being put inside, different containers and different things. It all had to be itemized, all had to be priced. You couldn't, because otherwise, if you run into trouble in an inspection, someone looks at it and they found your paperwork wrong, well, now you could really get in some trouble. So just to have someone who's going to pay attention to all the little details and make sure it's going to happen for you, right?
That is absolutely correct. I really can confirm that. I remember we had to have a packing list.
Yeah.
For those items I had stuffed in Germany into the truck, which gets shipped with the truck. We had tanks in there and sun visors, little parts and stuff like that needed an extra packing list beside all the other paperwork. So now the thing is, I know from the community there is some people, they like to buy a truck, or they have already purchased a truck. They want to ship it over here. So what would you say, Bruce, if somebody has purchased a truck, what should they do first? Should they contact you? Are you willing to take this on? Are you willing to help out the community here?
Yeah, I would help. It's not a problem. Me or someone like me, you just need to find someone who's willing to do the work.
Yes.
Right? And project freight. Just keep that in mind. Project freight.
Project freight. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Because it is a project.
Yeah.
So people can get a hold of me through you, or if you can give them my email address.
What I will do is I will set up a link to Bruce's webpage and also his contact information below the video. If you're in need of a shipping agent or an agency, as you heard that, he is willing to help you out. So, but let me ask you a question. when some from the community buy a truck and this truck is sitting somewhere in France or in Netherlands or whatever, right? They contact you and say, hey, Bruce, can you bring my truck in? This is not that you do everything. You can't, because you don't know anybody or you know a lot of people, I know that, but particularly in France or in Holland or in England, they would be able to drive the truck to the port. So what you probably would say, as soon as the truck is in the port, I can take care of it. Is that right to say? Is that?
Well, I would say, well, it's actually more than that, because you still got to assemble all the documentation to get it out of the country, right? And also assemble the documentation so that when it gets to this country, it'll be accepted.
Yeah.
So it really starts with, I have a truck.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Then I want to know the address. Where's the address of the truck? Who's the contact at that truck place?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to figure out. Okay, I'm going to figure out the routing.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to send you an email with all the requirements that I need you to come up with. I need this. I need that. I need the other. Just a list.
Yeah.
And I can help get some of that stuff if it's applicable. Quite often it comes from the owner.
Yeah.
And identification from you, and and then shipping instructions. So that's what I do, because it's best to know where it is and just look at it like a map, right? It's here, it's got to get there, and then it's got to go across the ocean here, and it's just
right,
logistically putting it together.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so you're taking that person by the hand,
yep,
guide him through.
It's the only way to do it.
Perfect. I guess this helps a lot. If you're in need of some shipping personnel, let's say, Bruce is the man. You have seen Bruce. He will help you to bring the truck of your dreams over to North America. Either it is into the States or into Canada. He is the guy to talk to. What we didn't mention in the conversation was the price for shipping it through the Panama Canal up the west coast. It was not much more. I ended up paying just a little bit over 9,000 Canadian dollar. So again, from Germany shipping out to east coast of Canada, Nova Scotia, Halifax, it was 6,000 Canadian dollar, and then going through the Panama Canal up the Californian coast onto the Washington coast, it was 9,000, a little bit over 9,000 Canadian dollar. So only 30% basically more than the east coast shipping cost. I'd like to show you which way my truck took, that one here, which way it took when it went through the Panama Canal. I will show you a little map. I could imagine that the shipping bill will be accordingly less if your truck leaves the ferry earlier. As you can see, there's multiple destinations in the States. So I really hope this helped some of you guys. Taking the doubts away that this could be complicated. It is not rocket science, but you have to keep certain procedures. If you have questions, ask away. Ask in the comment section below, or send me an email if you want to. If you have questions about the inspection which need to be done, as soon as your truck arrives at your house, then you have to go through a roadworthiness inspection. So this is it for me this week about the shipping and importing topic. I hope that I have next week more to show on my build, on my habitat. I need to continue with my habitat on the outside. As much I love to continue on the inside, it's really fun working on the interior walls and stuff like that, but I have to continue on the outside because the season will change pretty soon. We will get into fall and get colder temperatures, and then I won't be able to paint the outside of the habitat. So that needs to be done now, and I hope to be able to show you some progress next week, and I see you in the next one.